and today we're going to go over 3D in After Effects. Right now I just have a basic comp set up. I have this map in the background, I have the airship in the foreground, and it's animated right now, so the airship's just going whoosh, right across. Nothing too fancy. To make this 3D, the first thing we need is a camera. So I'm going to right click down here and select, I just right clicked it, New, and we want camera. Don't worry about these options for right now. It should all be set up for the default, which is what we want. Just click OK. And we now have a camera. And as you've noticed, nothing looks like it has changed at all. That's okay. The next thing we want to do, and I had already done this, is see this little box here? This is what you use to toggle between layers to tell it whether a layer is 3D or 2D. In this case, I'm going to toggle both of these just so I can demonstrate first what the 3D is and how it works. So if I'm right here, and it looks like nothing's changed, right? Well, if I come over to my camera tools, and it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's the fifth option. There's unified camera, orbit, and then the X and Y and the Z. In this case, I'm just going to use the orbit camera tool to show you. When I pan my camera around, you can see it's 3D, right? And in this case, it looks like the airship is attached to the map, doesn't it? It's kind of like it was almost like printed on the map. Well, if I go down here to the airship, look at the transform tools, and I'm going to grab this. This is the X, this is the Y, and that means this is the Z. So when I adjust the Z axis, as you can see, I'm going to move my camera again. Look, the ship now moves in this kind of weird arc shape. So if I'm going to scrub through on the playhead, leaving it there, it's going to start all the way over, it's going to come out almost towards the camera, and then it's going to go back down. Okay, not that exciting. But it does just demonstrate to you how 3D works. You know, we actually are working in a third dimension. It's not fake. It's actual 3D. So I'm going to reset my camera to about what it was. I'm going to figure out where that Z-axis keyframe is. Let's get rid of it. Wham. So that's the basics of what it does. In terms of tool, the orbit tool will do what I just did. It lets you kind of like orbit around your subject and see what's going on. The track tool, X and Y, lets you pan on the X-axis and up and down on the Y-axis. And that's all you're doing. You're panning up and you're panning left and right. The track Z tool lets you zoom in and zoom out, i.e. you're moving on the Z-axis, which is, you know, the line here. And when I'm using these tools, it looks like I am moving my airship and my map, and that's actually not the case. I'm moving the camera. I'm actually moving the camera. You can tell that by if I go down here to the camera and show the tools, watch the position here. Right now we're at negative, whatever it is. And when I use the Z-axis, it's actually moving the position of the camera. This allows us to do a lot of complicated stuff within After Effects. Because not only can I animate how objects are coming across the screen, I can also animate how the camera moves. So if the ship is moving like this, as it's moving in this kind of weird arc, I could have the camera slowly pan and zoom in on it, right? Let me do a quick sloppy example. So I'm on the camera, I'm going to mark. I'm just basically going to tell it to animate everything for this case, just to cover my butt. I'm going to go up here. And what I did is, you notice on the start of the timeline, it's on the start of the timeline saying, hey, the camera should be in this position. When we get to, it's 10 seconds long. It disappears at 7. Sorry. So let's say about the halfway point here. I want the camera to zoom in on the ship. I'm going to zoom in a little with my Z-axis. I'm going to get the X and Y. I'm going to pan it. So how does that look? So when we scrub through, the camera's moving as the ship and the globe are moving, right? Gives us a weird sense of movement. Well, as it goes, the camera stopped moving, remember? Because this is where I told the camera to stop moving. And the ship just kind of like, see ya, losers. Let's say I want to follow that. So I'm going to grab the orbit tool. I'm just going to pan until I can kind of... Alright, it's not really a 3D object, so we'll just go like that. We'll have it panned to that place, and then I'll move the Z, or the X and Y tracking going. I know it looks really weird with that purple. That's fine. I'll fix that in a second. So if I'm panning through, so we zoom in on it. And then as it leaves, the camera's going to pan with it, because I just told it to pan with it. And it's going to go off into the netherworld. Bye-bye. Mind you, again, this looks kind of crappy. That's fine. There's multiple things I could do in this case. One of them is I could come down here to my map layer. Transform. See the scale tool? Well, we're just going to make this thing giant. So that way, when we get to the part where it's supposed to fly off, watch. See, look. I'm just going to keep zooming up the scale. There we go. So now we're like in South America, Caribbean Isles. It's like, oh man, this place looks cool. Psych, I'm going to go over here because Hawaii's this way, and I like Hawaii. And he's just off to the yellow blue yonder. Da, da, da. Alright, again, mind you, this is a really, really crappy animation, but the main point of this is just to demonstrate how the 3D works within After Effects. And let me go back over what we did. In this case, there's the two layers, and I have 3D turned on and off. I have the camera, and I animated once, just the ship going across, and then I animate the camera, kind of telling the camera how to shift and pan. In addition to that, there's other options with the camera tool. For example, it says view 1. Right now we're seeing one view of our comp, right? Well, if I can get this thing to show up, let's go to 2 views, horizontal. What I'm seeing here are multiple views. And the reason you might want this is so when you're working in 3D, you don't get lost within where your project is. So as you can see, when I'm looking at this view, I have the camera. The camera's pointing at this, and you can kind of see that line represents the arc of the ship. And watch see how it kind of pans and shifts? This is us zooming in on the Z-axis, and then we change the orbit, so the rotation shifts and then follows the subject as it moves across. And over here mirrors what we're seeing over here. I can also change to 4 views. Well, I can change to this one too, but 4 views is crazy. Watch this. It's like, oh my gosh. Now, I don't have the biggest monitor in the world, though I do have a nice big monitor. So I generally do use either horizontal or vertical, and I switch between the two, or switch between them depending on what I want. But normally I can get by with just those. And so this is referred to as the active camera. What we're seeing right here in this area on the canvas is we're seeing what the camera sees. I can change that. I can go to, well, in this case, we don't have multiple cameras. You can have multiple cameras. Camera 1, it's going to be exactly the same thing because we only have one. I can go to the front view, which lets me see the setup. I can go to the top view, so that's, looking down, just like we saw when they were split. Right view, and so forth. So because perspective is so important when animating in 3D, just make sure that you make use of the views and tools so you can actually see and tell what's going on. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. So there you go. That's the basics of how to use 3D within After Effects.